Welcome back and welcome to the newspaper review segment on Daybreak, where we bring you up to speed with the stories making the headlines across some select national dailies this morning. As is customary, we'd like to start things off with a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today. There isn't much, but there's also much to look at on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper today. So the only other story that is non-Borno related or non-Zulum related is the story about uncertainty over electric vehicles takeoff in Nigeria. As you can imagine, when it comes to the automobile industry, electric cars are now the new wave, and not just the new wave, also perhaps the future of automobile industry in the world, as the world generally moves away from fossil fuel or combustion engine motors. So take a look at the story on page 4 to understand what some of the bottlenecks may likely be as far as the coverage on this news story is concerned. And as you can see, evidently, Zulum, 77 projects in 100 days on second term in Borno State, some of the beautiful edifices. And the exciting part is that this is all related to education. And it talks about a breakdown of the Alakaramti mega-size primary school commissioned by the Vice President this past week on Friday, and it has a 30 classroom in one-story building, administrative block for teachers and management staff, fully fenced, gated, landscaped, flowered, sporting facilities for volleyball. You have a playground. It's all encompassing, and I wish I had gone to a primary school that looks just like this one. Because you can imagine the state of the art is quite unique there, and all of it complementary to good governance and, of course, adequate enough resources allocated to the education sector, which has taken a very big hit in Borno State as a result of the insurgency in that state for the past 1 decade or so. Let's turn our attention now to the next newspaper for today. Let's take a look at the People's Daily, the front page of the People's Daily for today. Okay, talking about the People's Daily, let's bring you up to speed with some of those headlines. NDLA intercepts 399 Kaduna-bound explosives. That's good news. Arrest grandmother, others over illicit drugs. Now, what does an old woman have to do with drug trafficking or abuse? If you're interested, take a look at page 5 for more on that story. There's a special report on the People's Daily, and it says the rot, dirty deals in MDAs, cogs in the wheel of Tinubu's government. So perhaps it is going to unpack what many Nigerians already know about how corrupt the system really is in the country. 24 persons killed, several others missing in Niger boat mishap. As Adama boat mishap, death toll rises to 8. 8 more rescued and 7 still missing. I did talk about how not learning from our mistakes forces us to repeat those mistakes, and this is one of them. There's a picture of the Vice President, former Governor of Borno State, Senator Kashim Shettima, with Demai Borno, and the Governor of Borno State, Professor Baba Gana Zulum, there in the picture at the palace of Shehu Borno, I beg your pardon, and that was during the president's visit this past week. Brain drain. Over 500 medical consultants have left Nigeria, according to the Medical and Dental Association. And we did bring you that story a bit earlier. Catholic bishops task government on proliferation of arms. Minister orders immigration to clear passport backlogs within 2 weeks. As someone who recently got his passport, I must say that there is a need to cut down the downtime before people get their passport, and we want to see a lot more of that in the future. Will ensure promotion of national values, according to a minister. Who is that, and what is he talking about? Take a look at page 2 on the page of the People's Daily. Nigerian Air Force graduates 628 personnel to boost technical manpower. All right, the Nation newspaper is up next, so let's take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper for today. Now, President fair to Igbo with appointments, according to the governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo. Acquisition of banks. CBN Deputy Governor quizzed. More is still being unraveled by the Department of State Services. And the latest is on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. British warship in Lagos. Is that something we should worry about? I hope not, given the fact that it was given a small portion of the front page of the Nation newspaper for today. Federal roads collapse across states. Vice President directs urgent action on Jalingo Yola Road. Governors seek Umahi's quick intervention. Tinubu strikes multiple deals with Germany, Korea, India. The president is still away from the country following that invitation to attend the G20 summit in India. He was also in the UAE over the weekend, striking a lot more deals. It says world leaders pledge more interest in agriculture, fintech, education and defense. German Chancellor for Nigeria next month. President in UAE to resolve bilateral disagreements. And that and a lot more on the Nation newspaper. As you can see also the Vice President in Borno State flagging off or commissioning rather some of the projects in the state, as he also did take part in meeting with the Northeastern Governors Forum while during his visit to Borno State. All right, The Guardian is up next, so let's take a look at that. Falling consumption, weak sales threaten FMCG businesses and jobs. More on that on page 6, but you can see an infographic detailing some of that and why Nigeria is going through the motions as far as the economy is concerned. Labour Party seeks clarity from PEPC over judgment copies issued to APC. There's a lot of fuss about the watermark on the copies of the judgment, but also the legal team of the APC clarified and said, listen, when we got our first clean copy, we watermarked it and we started distributing it. Whether that makes sense to a lot of people or not, the Labour Party is seeking clarification from the Presidential Election Petition Court with regards to those copies issued to the APC. Catholic bishops decry worsening hardship in Nigeria. Forget bailouts, pay living wage, NLC tells government. There's a lot of fuss also about the 2 billion naira that most state governments have received. A lot of people are not so satisfied with how the governments have handled the distribution of the so-called palliatives. Now, how endless internal rows diminish status of once revered NBA. Yeah, the national conference was this past week, and I must say, it's very disturbing. And I think this is the second time in a row. The last time we saw them fight over souvenirs, this time around, there was still a lot of fights within the executives of the Nigerian Bar Association, and it just leaves much to be desired from our learned professionals. All right, that's the last story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper and sums it up for our newspaper review segment this morning. Let's unpack some of those stories now. Joining me on the program is Suleiman Ubagaya. He's CEO of Sky Limit Media Group, editor and former deputy president, Nigeria Guild of Editors, joining us to review the headlines this morning. Good morning to you, and thank you very much for coming on the program. It's good to see you on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today. There isn't much to go on, but there's something very telling about the future of transportation. The rest of the world is going electric. And like many other parts of the developing world, Nigeria is trying to catch up with that. The big story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper talks about uncertainty over electric vehicles takeoff in Nigeria. I mean, what are your thoughts about how this industry is evolving and our inability to have the necessary infrastructure to build on some of these developments?
This is a very poignant question, and I want to thank you for starting with this very serious and weighty subject of electric vehicles development in Nigeria. The global electric vehicle market is expanding exponentially. It rose from $300 billion last year to $500 billion this year, and growing to $1.5 trillion by 2030. Africa projects that the electric vehicle market is going to increase by $21 billion by 2017, that is in the next 4 years. Nigeria has set a target of increasing the percentage of electric vehicles by 7.5%. That is in ratio to other vehicles in the next 2 years. But the target does not seem to be feasible in the light of the fact that even as we speak, we have only 5 charging points for electric vehicles in Nigeria. Only about 300 electric vehicles plan our roads, whereas other countries like Zambia, like Kenya, like South Africa and Morocco have gone very far in terms of investment and development of electric vehicles. South Africa alone has more than 6,000 electric vehicles, whereas Nigeria, the giant of Africa with the biggest economy, has only about 300.
When you juxtapose Nigeria with all these other African countries, South Africa, Kenya, for instance, who are leading examples in this revolution, so to say, in this industry, what are they doing that we need to learn from, and how well are they implementing this change? Because there's that coexistence between electric vehicles, for instance, and the combustion engine vehicles that we do have. I mean, it's a long way before electric vehicles take over completely. I mean, we're probably a few decades from that happening. But until then, how rapid did the change happen for them, and what can we learn from that?
We can learn from that by upscaling our electricity supply. Right. This is just one example. South Africa is one country. South Africa, Kenya, Zambia, and Morocco that have been mentioned as examples in Africa, on the African continent, have upscaled their investment in renewable energy. But Nigeria is still talking about relying on fossil fuel, and the reality is that, the reserves in fossil oil is getting depleted by the day, So the end thing now is investment in, climate smart technology. And renewable energy will provide for a situation where you can get more charging points. We have only about 5, like I said, a very dismal figure. Other serious countries are having thousands of charging points. You go to a filling station, you don't buy fuel, you just plug in your vehicle, charge it, then continue your journey. That was obtained in even African countries.
Now, it is safe to say that electric vehicles are eco-friendly because of the zero emission, right? Yeah. But also they're not necessarily cheap vehicles. So you look at how the situation is with Nigeria's Naira, for instance, its poor performance against the dollar. Do you think there's an appetite for Nigerians to have electric vehicles? And is that a suggestion of why we haven't made a lot of inroad in that industry, for instance?
Well, the factors of demand and supply are going to resolve the issue you just raised. Yeah. By the time we upscale our investment and our production of electric vehicles, there will be more. And when there is more in the market, the price tends to come down. So the price is high now because the supply is grossly inadequate, especially in a society like ours. And talking about dollar, the way the dollar keeps making, I'm sorry to use the nonsense of our currency, the Naira. It will not have to be, it does not have to continue to be an issue by the time we upscale production of, that is at the local level, of electric vehicles, This is something that is doable. Other countries, even in Africa, have done so. There is no reason why a country dubbed as the giant of Africa cannot do so. We have the largest population, not just in Africa, but one of the highest also in the whole world. So I do not see why we cannot leverage on,
And do you
our
think,
resources to.
the Teslas, the Mercedes, and all these other car companies would be interested in Nigeria, not just as a market, but also as a possible location for perhaps some of their plants, for instance, because I understand that when it comes to the resources, we do have it. These electric vehicles need their lithium batteries to function and things like that. And it could be a possible opportunity for some sort of partnership that will bring some of these factories here, where Nigeria could not just be a destination for their product, but also an environment for them to thrive. And that's why we need some of these things that you talked about, stability of our power generation and supply, and also the infrastructure that is needed for this industry to thrive.
Okay, well, for that to happen, honestly, I think the Tinubu administration will have to engage with those companies. I'm happy that the president is engaging in shuttle diplomacy at the moment. The international trade or international relations presupposes that no country is self-sufficient, that we need to interact with one another to get things done. Even the biggest countries in the world have had to rely on others to get things done. We have lithium batteries. I mean, we have lithium as a resource in Nigeria. So there is no reason why, if you look at the factors affecting the location of industries, there is no reason why those companies will not set their factories in Nigeria. But then, of course, other factors that make for conducive business environment are going to play a factor in making sure they come here. A lot of these companies do not want to set their factories in Nigeria because they always talk about our corruption, our level of corruption becoming at all times unprecedented, very unfriendly business environment, multiple taxation and things like
insecurity is also
insecurity also. I'm happy you even reminded me of that. It's a very fundamental issue that needs to be resolved before any company sets its foot in Nigeria.
Right. Okay. Just on the Zulum, story. This is something that most people in Nigeria are quite used to. Success stories from Borno State are credited to the performance of Professor Babagana Zulum as governor. In the first 100 days, we had the commissioning of that mega facility in Maiduguri. Just give me a snapshot what you make of him as a governor and all that he has to show for his stewardship of a state that has been plagued by insecurity for over a decade.
I have always asked myself this mischievous question. When will Governor Zulum be tired of recording unprecedented achievements? Right. Some of his achievements are in real sense superhuman, at least in the Nigerian context. Here is a governor, as you rightly observed, governing a state ravaged by terrorism, Boko Haram terrorism, for over a decade. And insecurity has been, even though things have continued to improve, but insecurity has been very, very low. The scale of insecurity has been very, very low in Borno State. But yet, Governor Zulum has continued to break the odds to score very unprecedented achievements, like I said. Imagine him commissioning 77 major projects in just 100 days into his second term of office. That's why I said this as superhuman achievements, and I want to congratulate not just the people of Borno State who have the blessing of such a person as governor, but the entirety of Nigerian citizens or Nigeria as a country, because we have someone, a leader that we can project to the world as being worth the name. Right. Someone that is focused towards the development of not just his state, but the entirety of his people. Okay. So I congratulate the people of Borno State, and I hail the governor of Borno, Professor Umar Zulum.
Okay. Let's turn our attention now to the front page of the Nation newspaper for today. There's a lot more stories to unpack there. And from the very top, if you can start with that story, the president has been fair to Igbo with his appointment, according to Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo, the governor of Anambra State. Obviously, this has been a talking point from the get-go. In fact, from the selection process of the APC's, presidential candidate, and then his running mate, who happens to be from the northeastern part of the country and also a Muslim, sparked that conversation. What about the southeast? What about the Indibo, for instance? And then after that, the victory, then the selection or the nomination of the ministerial nominees, and then the southeast got the least amount of nominees with just 5 of them from the 5 states in the southeastern part of the country. The northwest and the northeast and the southwest had the majority of the ministerial nominees. But now we're hearing from one of the governors in the southeast saying that the president has been fair. What do you think is the motivation for this comment? Is it a reflection of the facts, or is it just his opinion on the state of affairs?
I think Professor Soludo is basing his argument on the fact that some of the unfair things that have been happening to the Southeast or to the Igbos are not the creation of the Tinubu administration. These are things that have their root from the era of the military. For example, the Northwest having 7 states. All other zones of the country have been at least 6. But the South is having only 5 states. So naturally, since ministers are appointed on the basis of states, the South is will always have the lowest figure because it has only 5, and of course, if it were like the Constitution says that at least one person will be appointed or should be appointed as a minister from each state, then it will still be the South is having the lowest number because it has only 5 states. The Northwest, like I said, has 7. So naturally, there will be 7 ministers if only one were to be appointed in states, And the Southeast will have had 5. So as it is, some states have 2. I don't think, there are maybe a few states that have only 1. Probably in terms of ministerial appointments, the Tinubu administration can decide to, I don't know whether it is feasible to increase the number from the Southeast, at least give them a semblance of fairness. We're talking about what the professor...
He's talking about juicy appointments, especially when he was, responding when Governor Dave Umahi, who is Minister of Works now, paid him a visit, said, listen, the Southeast has some juicy appointments because of the portfolio of the offices occupied by people from the Southeast in this administration.
Yeah, that is very true. Apart from Umahi, there are other very lucrative appointments. Of course, when we say juicy, it depends on what we mean by juicy.
But I think we also know what it means. The ones that get the resources and also have a lot of impact when it comes to governance.
Yeah, and indeed, Deb Umahi, the former governor of
Trade and Investment, Doris Anite from Imo State, Uche Naji, Innovation, Science and Technology.
Exactly.
You have a Minister of State, which is not necessarily juicy, but Women Affairs also in Uju Kennedy, who is from Anambra State.
Yeah. These are indeed very impactful appointments, and I believe they are not going to impact. They are going to impact not just on the Southeast, but the rest of Nigeria as well. Right. Okay. So the professor who is the governor of Anambra is right on that score.
Okay. The question in regards to the developments following the suspension, the arrest, and the investigation into the activities of former or suspended CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele is continuing to unravel, and acquisition of Bank CBN Deputy Governor is being quizzed. One of those latest developments that we have to come into contention with. What is your take on what the DSS is unraveling as far as the corruption within the CBN is concerned, and how it is going about all of this?
Well, the DSS, under the leadership of his DG Yusuf Bichi, has continued to be an institution of pride to Nigeria, and I would say to all people that are positive-minded globally. It has continued to serve us with this very delicious, let me put it that way, dish, getting to unravel a lot of unsavory activities that have taken place under the, I'm sorry to use the word, inglorious leadership of Godwin Emefiele.
Why do you say inglorious?
Inglorious in the sense that a lot of scandals are now coming to light. For example, the sale of banks. There is one bank, I've forgotten its name, that was said to have been sold at around 500 million naira. And after government has, through AMCON, injected over between 3 and 5 billion naira. Look at that kind of thing. You know, and look at the round tripping also during the old days of official I&E window, parallel market window, and the rest of that. That is talking about foreign exchange. You know, there are so many issues of corruption.
Are you one of those Nigerians, Mr. Suleiman, who, you know, adopts this idea or posture of Emefiele and his cohorts are guilty until proven innocent?
Well, I believe Emefiele... No, I do not believe Emefiele is guilty until proven.
You said inglorious. So
I did say inglorious because of, in the light of the revelations coming out. And don't forget also...
much of it now just allegations until the court says, you know, they're guilty of anything?
Well, we are investigative journalists and we happen to know a lot. We know, for example, that, well, matters that are in court, we shouldn't be commenting about them because is their subject, you understand. But then things that are not yet in court, we are inclined or we are duty bound to bring them to the public space. And there are so many issues, honestly, that have been brought to the light and that are very disappointing, very unwholesome, and it will not be out of place if his error is described as such. It does not remove from the fact that, of course, he is innocent until proven guilty by a competent court of law. You understand? We are getting to that. At least on one of the charges, the DSS has taken him to court, and I think other charges are now being compiled. So very soon we'll get to hear more about his stewardship. Don't forget the suffering he subjected Nigerians to as a result of the change of color.
Because that's responsibility for that.
Yeah, he has to take responsibility because the CBN has full powers as far as the CBN Act is concerned when it comes to monetary policy. So you don't just blame the politicians. I hear people talking about blaming President Buhari. The CBN has statutory powers under the CBN Act to act independently as far as monetary and fiscal policies are concerned. So he doesn't necessarily need, well, of course he will need the approval of the president, but it's purely CBN's initiative. And now many more things are coming to light about the shady things, you know, that inform or that characterize rather the
stewardship of MFN.
No, not just the stewardship, the people call it redesign of the Naira.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that is still yet to be, you know, confirmed with regards to some of those allegations. This is still a developing story. Just before we wrap things up, we take a look at the People's Daily. There are two interesting stories I would like us to focus on. 24 persons killed, several others missing in Niger boat mishap. As Adama boat mishap death toll rises to 8. 8 more rescued, 7 still missing. But below that picture of the Vice President, the Sheikh of Borno, and the Governor, there is also the story about the brain drain in our healthcare sector. Over 500 medical consultants have left Nigeria, according to MD Khan, which is the Medical and Dental Consultants Association of Nigeria. On the boat mishap, this has happened one too many times. This year alone, we had one in Kwara, the most notable one in Patigi. Hundreds of people died when that wedding convoy in that boat was, you know, unfortunately met with that tragic incident when the boat capsized. This has been the situation for years now. What do you think is responsible for this lack of attention when it comes to our waterways and you know, water transportation, for instance? It is still in its very crude and traditional form for the most part. Why is government not paying enough attention to that until something as tragic as this happens?
Well, it was Bob Dawn, the English poet, very famous English poet, who said the death of every soul diminishes him because he's involved in mankind. As to the reason why these things have happened and will continue to happen or have continued to happen is simply because those that are in power are hardly involved, or their members of their family are hardly involved.
You think it doesn't resonate with them?
Yeah, it doesn't resonate with them because it's just like road transportation. If you are traveling, for example, from Abuja to Kaduna, you can imagine, you can count the number of potholes on the road. Of course, in terms of insecurity, government has continued to do a lot, and I give it a fair score on that. But talking about infrastructure, on our waterways, it has remained, it has continued to decay without much or any significant investment being done by either federal or state governments, simply because their members of their family are hardly involved, in for example, boat riding and things like that. Right. You understand? So it's that,
is this
that I would say is simply
the
reason.
minister to work on, because he appears to have some very bright ideas about our waterways, for instance.
Yeah. It's an area, honestly, the new government and of course particularly the new minister should work on. Okay. At least life should be seen to be sacred in Nigeria. Right. All over the world, in America, if one person dies, you hear the president coming out to talk about it, to commiserate with or even visiting the affected families. But here, we don't, at least those in power does not seem to bother anymore. Right. When people are involved in mishaps like the one that has unfortunately happened in Niger State.
Right, okay. Very briefly on the 500 medical and consultants leaving the country and why that is continuing to, affect our healthcare sector.
I think two issues are responsible. One, the medical infrastructure in Nigeria is very dismal. You go to hospitals, many hospitals, especially government-owned hospitals, you find that the basic machineries are not in place, or those that are in place have decayed. And secondly, the issue of remuneration. The packages for our medical doctors is terribly poor. Whereas, for example, a medical doctor in America will earn $10,000 in a month, typically.
Now we hear they're going as close as Gambia, for instance, where they get paid a lot more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
These are fundamentally the reasons.
Okay. We're going to have to end it for here for now. Thank you very much, Mr. Suleiman Ubagaya, CEO, Skylimit Media Group, editor and former Deputy President, Nigeria Guild of Editors. We do appreciate your insight on the headlines this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Yeah, most welcome.
Right, and this is where we drop the anchor on today's edition of Daybreak. Thank you most kindly for joining us. We do really appreciate you for your time and for your company. We'll be back tomorrow, live as always at 8 a.m. exclusive on Trust TV. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for watching. Good morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.